ねえ清高、やばいんじゃないの？
何がって、なんで下の名前なんだ？
平田くんのこと陽介くんって呼ぶようになったし、あんたも一応ね。
So, part one of the sports festival episodes for Classroom of the Elite is finally upon us. And what I will say, kind of like right out the gate, is I don't think this was the most exciting episode, but this episode definitely did play a very, very important part for the story and for kind of like all the plot points that are going to be happening as kind of like the actions of Class D, Class C, and even Class A kind of begin to root themselves in. So this episode kind of takes a few different kind of like places in. It picks up right where we left off last week. Starts off with Ken or whatever, really, fired up and ready to go and to go out and win every single event that he can for Class D in tandem with Class A. And it starts off with Class D really shooting up the points. Like they had a monumental lead over Class C for the sports festival event. But it all begins to kind of like fall apart and begin to diminish itself. Once Ryun's, Ryun? We're going to go with Ryun. Right when Ryun's plans, which is the leader of Class C, begin kind of to fall in place and begin to kind of like come to fruition, the cards begin to kind of change in their favor. So there's a few different notable things that I thought were really important in this episode. That first off, we got to see a little bit of K this episode. So, anytime that I get to see more K in action is a good episode. We only got to see her a little bit, and the little part that we saw her, she was interacting with Ayanaokiji. There was two scenes that she was interacting with Ayanaokiji. One was kind of like after, or like the midway point, for a lunch break, trying to figure out, okay, who was a traitor this time? And then the first part was initially when Horikita was really like, kind of like singled out, and she met with Ayanaokiji, like, yo, what the F is going on? And I love how she called him by his first name, and even Ayanaokiji was like, what? And she was like, yo, I call Yusuke by his first name. I thought I would try it with you. Now, the funny part there is I don't know if Ayanaokiji liked it or not, and he didn't say anything. He didn't tell Kay, like, hey, don't call me that, or don't use my last name. So I do think that will get Ayanaokiji in trouble at some point later, whether it's with Kushida, whether it's with Horikita, whether it's with somebody else. I think that will get him in trouble later on, because inevitably Kay is going to do it again in front of somebody, and they're going to look at him like, what is this? So I'm waiting for that to happen. Then, kind of like as we move forward and Horikita begins to get challenged, and as she gets singled out more, again, we get to see Ryun's plan from Class C. He begins to kind of play Class D like a fiddle. He singles her out. He gets her injured. That fires up Ken to immediately try and go. I think the cavalry battle is like the next one, and they F him up. Then we try to figure out, okay, well, Ayanaokiji reveals to us, okay, there's somebody working with Ryun, right? There's somebody working with him from Class D. Somebody has leaked out to Ryun who is going to be like the main person for every single event from Class D. So somebody kind of like leaked everything out on the table. And at this point, we don't know exactly who it is, but the plan obviously is to crush Horikita. And we don't know if at this point was it Kushida or is it somebody else? Now, the anime, or this episode of the anime, is definitely trying to point us in the direction of it being Kushida, because she was the original traitor. Then this episode, Ayanaokiji gets Kushida and Horikita together. He tells Horikita, about like, hey, Kushida was the traitor originally. The moment that he gets them together, Horikita is like, even Ayanaokiji was like, yo, I didn't expect her to be that straightforward. She straight up was like, yo, I know that you leaked the information during the ship event, blah, 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 blah. So there was that moment, and then later on in the episode where Ryun kind of like singles out Horikita again and gives her the ultimatum about the points and getting on her knees and stuff, they show us Kushida again, and the only reason Ryun gave her that ultimatum is because Kushida spoke up, which, it, again, is trying to point us in the direction of suspecting Kushida, but there's a strong chance that in this specific case, it might not be Kushida. It's just trying to be shown to us or proposed to us in that way. So I really think that this is like misdirection, and I don't think Kushida is the person who's working with Ryun. I do think that she was the traitor originally for her own, whatever it was. So when, during the ship episode, Kushida got with Ayanaokiji and, she tried to hug him and whatever, and she was like, oh, I'm so lonely. So I do think that she was trying to fill a hole during the ship arc. I don't think that it's her this time, though. I think that is classic misdirection. And then the other things that I want to call out, too, is obviously Ayanaokiji is still playing 4D chess. He's talking about how his goal during the sports festival is not to have Class D win the sports festival. It's simply to have them fail, kind of like spectacularly. I don't know for what, to motivate them maybe, but he wants to use their loss here for something more important in the future, and that blows Kei's mind. Then we kind of like fast forward in the episode, and after we see Horikita, right before she goes and talks to Ken, right before she gets bombarded by Ryun, Ayanaokiji sees her and he calls her, he literally says these lines, how long are you going to sit there being useless? And I was like, oh my God, Ayanaokiji, don't do it to her. And that kind of remotivates her a little bit. Then she falls into Ryun's trap, which I have to assume that Ayanaokiji kind of saw that one coming as well. What he's going to do about it, I don't know. And then we see Horikita interact, after that whole ultimatum, we see Horikita interact with her brother, saying that I knew these things are going to happen. I won't let you be soiled by this, essentially. And I still need to see more. We saw a little bit about it during in season 1, but I still need to see more about why her care or concern for her brother is just so deep-rooted. Like, I need to see more flashbacks from her past to see on why it's so deep-rooted within her, because that is something that is always very curious to me, too. Last thing I'll say is that was the episode. Overall, the episode's kind of boring, but, again, if it's going to play a very... Unlike some other anime to where, like, you have a boring episode, you're like, what the F was this? This, because it's meant to be slow and methodical, this is very important as it's going to play a larger part in the larger form of the anime as the season comes out. The last thing I'll say before I dip is this season has distracted me from one thing, and that is my desire to learn more about Ayanaokiji. Because last season, the first season, we touched on some of his backstory, his science projectness, his escape from the lab. The leader at the lab, is his father. There's still more that I want to learn about Ayanaokiji, and I hope that we don't get so far off left onto this other arc storyline that we never revisit some of the inner workings of Ayanaokiji's past. So I'm gonna leave you guys some of those thoughts there. Let me know what you thought about this episode down in the comments below. And of course, as always, my friends, stay elite. Peace.